Imagine a galaxy on the brink of extinction. For centuries, the Galactic Federation stood as a beacon of hope, uniting countless civilizations under one banner, until the swarm arrived. A relentless, all-consuming hive mind, it devoured world after world, leaving nothing but silence in its wake. The Federation's greatest fleets crumbled, their brightest minds fell silent, and one by one, the lights of civilization flickered out. But in the final moments of their collapse, as the last command centers shuddered under the swarm's assault, a single revelation cut through the despair. Buried in a forgotten archive, a cryptic transmission surfaced Earth's coordinates, accompanied by a message that defied all logic: activate Protocol Omega. Humanity was the backup plan. The High Chancellor, bleeding out on the fractured bridge, gasped the order that would change everything: send the signal before it's too late. As the swarm's shadow swallowed the room, that signal raced across the void, a desperate plea to a species that hadn't even known it was part of a grander design. Why Earth? Why us? The answer lies in a story of survival so audacious, so unexpected, that it rewrites what it means to be the underdog. Because when the galaxy's most advanced civilizations failed, when their technology and strategies turned to dust, it was humanity, flawed, resilient, and utterly unpredictable, that became the universe's last hope. This isn't just a tale of war or conquest. It's about the moment the galaxy discovered that the key to salvation wasn't some invincible superweapon or an army of perfect beings. It was us. The species that clawed its way up from caves, that turned disasters into stepping stones, that looked at the impossible and said, "Watch me." As the swarm closes in, as worlds burn and civilizations fall, the question isn't whether humanity can rise to the challenge. It's whether the galaxy is ready for what happens when we do. Strap in. This is the story of how humans became the backup plan, and why that might have been the best decision the universe ever made. The Ares drifted silently through the dark, its engines idling as the crew scanned the void beyond Pluto's frozen orbit. Routine patrols were supposed to be dull paperwork, system checks, the occasional smuggler's chase. But when the comms console lit up with a burst of static, Captain Elias Vance knew instantly this was anything but routine. The signal cut through standard encryption like it wasn't even there, a shriek of data in a language no human had ever heard, and yet the ship's AI translated it in seconds. Faces paled as the words scrolled across the screen. Federation Priority Omega. All surviving units rally to Sector 009, activation code pale blue dot. Lieutenant Cho was the first to break the silence. "That's us, they're talking about Earth." The science officer, Dr. Vela, traced a trembling finger over the accompanying data, genetic markers, historical records, even fragments of human myth. It's not just a call for help, it's an invocation. They're saying we were planted here, a contingency plan. Vance's grip tightened on the command chair. For what? Vela's voice dropped to a whisper. For them. The swarm consumes civilizations like clockwork, predictable, efficient, but us, we're chaos. We split atoms to make war, then turn the same science into medicine. We invent gods, then build machines to reach them. The Federation didn't just find us. They designed us to be the one thing the swarm can't digest. A klaxon tore through the ship. The AI's voice, usually calm, was raw with urgency. Swarm scout signatures detected at 0.2 light-years and closing. Cho's console flared with red icons, dozens of them, moving fast. "Captain, if they're already this close," Vance didn't let her finish. "Plot a course for Earth." Maximum burn. As the Ares spun toward home, its engines screaming, one thought burned brighter than the threat behind them: they think we're their weapon. Let's show them what that really means. The Ares shuddered as the swarm's tendril-like ships closed in, their surfaces rippling with organic weapon ports. No engine flare, no heat signatures, just the cold precision of a predator that had done this 1,000 times before. The ship's systems flickered, then died, drained like a corpse in a vacuum. Vance's fingers flew over the manual override, but the controls might as well have been stone. Then the voice came, not through speakers, but inside their skulls, a chorus of wet clicks and splintering bone. "You are irrelevant, surrender biomass," Cho's breath hitched. "They're not scanning us, they're tasting us." Vance didn't hesitate. His palm slammed down on the emergency panel, activating the prototype warp pulse, a human invention cobbled together from scavenged Federation tech and raw desperation. The Ares convulsed as space-time twisted around it, hurling the swarm scouts back in a shockwave of distorted gravity. Red lights bathed the bridge, but the captain's grin was razor-sharp. They expected prey, they got a trap. Vela clutched her console as the ship groaned. "That pulse burned half our fuel, and they'll adapt fast. We can't outrun them twice." "Don't need to." Vance's eyes locked on the tactical display where the swarm ships writhed like stunned insects. "They're fast, they're smart, but they've never fought something that cheats." He tapped a command into the nav computer, not a retreat to Earth, but a hard burn toward the Kuiper belt. "See that debris field? Old mining rigs, ice chunks, enough radiation to fry a planet's worth of sensors. We lose them in the junk, rig a few surprises with the warhead stockpile." Cho's fingers danced over her console, rerouting power, "and if they follow." Vance's voice dropped to a whisper. "Then we show them why the Federation hid us. Ever see a wolf pack walk into a minefield?" The Ares shot forward, its hull groaning, trailing liquid metal like blood in the water. Behind them, the swarm ships twitched, then surged in pursuit, exactly as planned. The storm howled like a dying beast across Antarctica's frozen expanse, whipping snow into a blinding fury. Inside the research outpost, Dr. Anya Petrov's hands shook not from the cold, but from the seismic readings pulsing across her screen. "That's not a glacier shift," she muttered, tracing the jagged lines. "It's hollow down there." The team had dismissed the legends for years, whispers of a Federation outpost buried beneath the ice, a relic from before human history. But when the drill bit shattered on something harder than diamond, when the sonar pinged back a perfect geometric shape half a mile below, even the skeptics fell silent. They found the entrance by accident. A crevasse split open beneath their crawler, nearly swallowing it whole, and there, glinting in their headlights, was a doorway. Not stone, not metal, but something alive. It pulsed faintly, veins of blue light threading its surface like capillaries. Petrov's breath fogged the air as she pressed a palm to it. The moment her skin made contact, the thing recognized her. The door didn't open, it unfolded, peeling apart like a flower greeting the sun. Inside, the air was stale but warm, humming with a sound just below hearing. The walls weren't smooth, they rippled, adjusting subtly to the team's presence, and at the chamber's heart, suspended in a column of light, waited the hologram. It was humanoid, but wrong, elongated limbs, eyes too large, skin shimmering like oil on water. The architect, the moment it spoke, Petrov's knees buckled. Not from fear, from the weight in its voice, a resonance that vibrated in her bones. "You are late." The words weren't in any language, yet she understood them. "But you are here." This was calculated. The hologram gestured, and the chamber's walls dissolved into a star map. Earth flickered at its center, surrounded by branching lines, not invasion routes, but growth patterns. "Like roots, like veins. We did not create your species, we curated it." The hologram's fingers plucked at the strands, and Petrov gasped. The timelines didn't match. Human evolution sped up in bursts coinciding with ice ages, asteroid strikes, every near-extinction event. Chaos is your gestation, each catastrophe a raffiner's fire. The Federation's order was its weakness. The swarm expects order, but you, the architect's lips curled. "You break rules you have not yet learned." A chime sounded. Petrov's assistant, Chen, staggered back from the far wall, his scanner flashing crimson. Anya the walls, she grabbed the device, her pulse spiking. The readings weren't just active tech, they were alive, nanites dormant for millennia, now stirring like a stirred hive. Chen's voice cracked. They match human neural patterns. It's not a weapon, it's a bridge. The hologram's eyes locked onto Petrov's. Your unpredictability is theoretical. The swarm will adapt unless. The chamber trembled. Ice cracked overhead. Alarms screamed through the facility as Chen's monitor erupted with warnings, thermal spikes, movement, not from the vault, from above. Petrov barely heard him. She was staring at the architect's outstretched hand, where the nano-swarm now coalesced into a single, pulsing orb, unless you become chaos itself. The orb floated toward her, and the ground beneath them heaved. Somewhere above, the ice was breaking, and something hungry was digging its way down. The swarm's black tide rolled over Johannesburg like a wave of living shadow, consuming skyscrapers whole. Satellite feeds showed the same nightmare repeating across a dozen cities, human forces falling back, their orderly defenses torn apart by creatures that learned faster than bullets could fly. In the ruins of New Delhi, General Adisa watched a tank battalion's last stand through smoke-stung eyes. Their shells had punched holes in the swarm's front lines yesterday. Today, the creatures slithered between the explosions like they'd memorized the trajectories. His radio crackled with the same desperate question from every front. How do you kill something that stops fearing your weapons? Then the artifact spoke. Deep in a Berlin bunker, scientists had pried open a downed swarm drone, and what spilled out wasn't circuitry, but something wet and twitching. It reassembled itself before their eyes, knitting new limbs from broken ones, whispering in a voice like grinding teeth. Your cities are empty calories. Your strategies are echoes. The Federation had fleets, you have chaos theory. The scientist recoiled as it laughed, a sound like bones snapping. You cannot win, you are alone. Vance's face filled every surviving screen on Earth 2 hours later. His uniform singed, his grin feral. Got good news and bad news, folks. Bad news, they're right, we are alone. The camera panned to show the mangled swarm drone behind him, its limbs bound with steel cables and live wires. Good news, alone means no rules. His boot slammed down on the drone's thorax, and for the first time the creature shrieked. See, they keep calling us irregulars. Let's show him what that really means. The message went viral in a world with no internet left. Scrawled on subway walls, tapped in Morse code through dead zones, passed mouth to ear through refugee columns. Fight messy. Fight mean. In Manila, teenagers lured swarm hunters into flooded subway tunnels, then triggered the power grid, boiling the water alive. Kenyan herders dug pits lined with salvaged nano-sharpened glass, watching swarm scouts writhe as their regeneration failed. A retired physics professor in Montreal turned his neighborhood into a fractal death maze, every cul-de-sac rigged with resonating sound emitters tuned to the frequency that made swarm cells vibrate apart. The swarm's advance didn't just slow, it stuttered. Their perfect coordination faltered as human actions became statistically impossible to model. A hive mind built to consume civilizations starved on the buffet of human improvisation. Vance watched the tactical maps from the Ares crippled bridge, red zones flickering like faulty pixels. That's it, he whispered. They don't fear bullets anymore. Fine, scare them something worse. On screen, a swarm overlord's biomechanical cruiser listed suddenly, its hull erupting in jagged spines, not from weapons but from the nanite swarm it had just absorbed. The feed cut to Petrov in Antarctica, her eyes glowing faintly blue, her voice layered with something older. You wanted chaos. The ice behind her cracked open, revealing veins of pulsating light. Let's talk definitions. Earth cities burned. Earth's people fought back with everything from kitchen knives to reprogrammed streetlights, and for the first time in 1,000 conquered worlds, the swarm's hunger hesitated. Reports from the front lines came in fractured, contradictory swarm units turning on each other in the ruins of Moscow, their perfect coordination unraveling like frayed wire. Dr. Petrov watched the feed from Antarctica, her fingers tracing the data spikes with dawning realization. They're not adapting anymore, they're fracturing. Her breath fogged the screen as she leaned closer. Our unpredictability isn't just confusing them, it's rewriting them. On the Ares broken bridge, Lieutenant Cho barked a laugh, her voice raw from smoke and adrenaline. Turns out free will's contagious. Who knew? The tactical display showed swarm drones tearing into their own kin. Their movements jerky, erratic, no longer a hive, but a million voices screaming in dissonance. Vance didn't celebrate. His eyes locked onto the new signal blooming at the edge of the solar system, a vessel larger than a moon, its surface writhing with bioluminescent veins. The Swarm Queen's ship, her voice cut through every comm channel at once, a scalpel slicing into their skulls. This distortion ends now, you will be purged. The words weren't a threat, they were a fact delivered with the casual certainty of a star going dark. Vance exhaled slowly, his hand hovering over the console where Petrov's nano-swarm waited in its containment vial. Doc said this stuff connects to their network, right? Makes us part of their conversation. Cho nodded, her grin sharpening. Then let's introduce her to chaos. The vial shattered, the nanite surged into the ship's vents like ink in water, and for a heartbeat, nothing. Then the Ares lights flared crimson as the swarm fused with its systems with them, threading into the crew's neural links like roots into soil. Vance's vision fractured into 1,000 perspectives, seeing through the eyes of a child hiding in a soul basement, a mechanic in Rio Jury rigging an EMP grenade, Petrov standing barefoot on Antarctic ice with the architect's voice humming in her bones. The Queen's ship shuddered. Her next command came out garbled, warped, obey, no, stop. The dissonance wasn't just in the swarm's ranks anymore, it was in her. Vance tasted copper, felt the nanites singing in his blood. You wanted order. He slammed his fist down, and the Ares' dying engines roared to life, hurtling them straight toward the Queen's throat. Welcome to humanity's playlist. The Queen's command ship pulsed with sickly violet light as her influence spread like a virus through Earth's last remaining comm channels. Every screen, every speaker, even emergency broadcast systems crackled with her voice, a sound like razors dragged across glass. Your resistance is inefficient. Your extinction is optimal. Satellite feeds showed her fleet tightening around the planet, a noose of living warships. Then the screens flickered. For 3 whole seconds, Earth held its breath until a new signal overrode the Queen's frequency. Not words, not a plea. Guitar feedback screeched through the void, distorted and raw, followed by a drumbeat that hit like a sledgehammer. Vance had patched the Ares' last functioning transmitter directly into the Queen's network, with the volume cranked to 11. The heavy metal riff tore through the swarm's psychic link, and the effect was instant. On the tactical display, swarm cruisers wobbled like drunk moths, their formations unraveling into chaos. One ship collided with another in a burst of chitinous shrapnel. They feel that Cho whooped, slapping her console. Turns out eardrums are universal. The Queen's shriek nearly blew out the Ares speakers. Enough. Her fleet surged forward, a tidal wave of fangs and claws, but something was different. Their movements lacked their usual precision. A cruiser veered off course, its hull spasming. Another fired wildly, its plasma bursts missing human targets by miles. Petrov's voice cut through the noise, her words layered with the architect's resonance. They're fighting themselves. Our chaos is in their veins now. Vance watched a swarm destroyer abruptly pivot not toward Earth, but toward the Queen's own command ship. Its weapons glowed red-hot. Music so bad it starts civil wars, he muttered. Should have sent a poet. On the surface, in bunkers and bombed-out streets, humans raised whatever they had left: broken pipes, jury-rigged lasers, fists. The queen had come for an orderly conquest. What she got was a mosh pit. The sky over Antarctica split open as Petrov raised her arms, veins of blue light surging beneath her skin. The nano-swarm erupted from the ice in a geyser of liquid metal, twisting midair like a living thunderstorm before lashing toward the swarm drones. Where the two forces collided, something extraordinary happened. The enemy didn't just fall. They changed. Drones mid-flight shuddered, their carapaces cracking like eggshells as the nanites burrowed in, rewriting their code in real time. One moment, a swarm hunter was diving toward a refugee convoy. The next, it arched its back, mandibles clicking in a staccato rhythm that almost sounded like laughter. Then it turned and ripped into its former kin with frenzied glee. The architect's voice whispered through Petrov's teeth, thick with satisfaction. Chaos is a language, now they speak it. High above, the Queen's flagship convulsed, its bioluminescent veins flickering like a failing heart. Her shriek wasn't transmitted, it was felt, a psychic hurricane that sent human operatives clutching their heads from Berlin to Buenos Aires. This is impossible. You are vermin. Vance's response was to punch the Ares throttle straight into her hull. The ship was already dying, its corridors filled with smoke, its decks littered with the unconscious forms of crew members whose nervous systems had fused with the nanites. Cho dragged herself to the weapons console, her fingers leaving bloody smears on the controls. Cap, we got maybe one shot before, then make it loud. The impact tore through the Queen's flagship like a knife through wet paper. Atmosphere vented in screaming plumes as the Ares' reinforced prow carved deep, its reactors going critical. Vance's final transmission wasn't a heroic last stand. It was a grin, wild and unrepentant, his voice barely audible over the alarms. Welcome to improv class. The explosion lit the night side of Earth brighter than noon. For 3 heartbeats, the world held its breath. Then the debris cloud parted and she emerged. The Queen's body was half gone, her left side a ruin of melted chitin, but the remains of her form shivered, knitting itself back together with horrific speed. This wasn't regeneration, it was adaptation. Her remaining eye locked onto Petrov's position from orbit, pupil dilating like a targeting scope. You have taught me hunger, she hissed, and for the first time the words carried something almost human. Not fear, not rage, craving. Petrov's knees hit the ice as the architect's presence surged inside her skull, its tone suddenly urgent. You must understand. She does not want to destroy you anymore. The nano-swarm around them recoiled as if sensing a new threat. Now she wants to become you. The ice beneath Petrov's feet trembled as the hidden data core erupted from the glacier, its surface fracturing like an eggshell to reveal a pulsing, organic console. The architect's hologram flickered, not the composed entity from before, but a figure hunched in agony, its luminous skin peeling away to show something raw beneath. We were wrong, it gasped, its voice fraying at the edges. The swarm doesn't just consume civilizations, it digests them, absorbs their logic, their patterns, until nothing remains but its own reflection. The hologram's fingers clawed at its chest, where a swirling darkness spread like ink in water. We built systems too flawless, too symmetrical, and when the swarm came for us, we were delicious. The console projected a star map into the frigid air, dozens of worlds, each labeled with a civilization's name, each blinking out in turn. Then Earth appeared, its timeline jagged with ice ages, extinctions, wars. So we seeded chaos, the architect whispered. Genetic mutations, cognitive dissonance, dreams that outran reality. We didn't create humanity, we unshackled you. The hologram dissolved into static, reforming as a final image. The architect's homeworld, its towers crumbling as their own nanites turned against them, consuming their creators in a desperate bid to hide Earth's coordinates. The swarm consumes perfection, only imperfection endures. A guttural scream split the air, not from the hologram, but from orbit. On the broken view screen, the Queen convulsed, her remaining carapace splitting as human tissue erupted beneath it. Her voice, once a chorus of razor blades, now cracked like a child's. "What is this pain?" She clutched her head, her movements jerky, uncoordinated. Petrov staggered back, her own nanites humming in recognition. She's not adapting anymore, she's feeling. The realization hit like a freight train. The Queen had absorbed too much human data, not just tactics or biology, but the neural patterns of a species that mourned its dead, raged at injustice, loved irrationally. The swarm's perfect unity was fracturing under the weight of emotion. Above them, the Queen's fleet spasmed. Ships collided without orders. Drones froze mid-attack, shuddering as unfamiliar chemicals flooded their systems: adrenaline, cortisol, doubt. The Queen's shriek echoed through the atmosphere, equal parts fury and terror. "Make it stop." Petrov looked down at her hands where the nanites swirled in frantic patterns. The architects had died to hide Earth, the Federation had fallen to protect it, and now the last weapon wasn't a virus or a bomb. It was the one thing humanity had in endless supply. "No," she whispered, then louder, to the sky, to the wounded god writhing in orbit. "Welcome to being alive." The Queen's response wasn't words, it was a sob. The Queen's scream tore through the atmosphere like a dying star, half fury, half something no swarm had ever uttered before: confusion. Her remaining fleet shuddered to a halt, drones freezing mid-maneuver as if caught in an invisible web. On the ground, Petrov watched through a haze of pain as the nanites in her blood whispered images directly into her optic nerve, the Queen's mindscape fracturing like glass under a hammer. The swarm's perfect hive unity was unraveling, infected by the very thing they'd been designed to crush: individuality. Vance's voice crackled over the last functional comm channel, his words slurred from blood loss but razor-sharp with triumph. "Hurts, doesn't it? First time feeling yourself." Above them, the Queen's flagship convulsed, its biomechanical spine snapping like brittle bone. Her voice, when it came, was a patchwork of dissonant tones, the swarm's collective rasp layered with human sobs, a child's whimper stitched to a general's roar. "I am, we are, I am the swarm." The declaration ended in a wet gasp. "Then why do I remember names?" Petrov understood first. The Queen wasn't just absorbing human tactics or biology anymore, she'd swallowed memories. A mother rocking her baby in a bombed-out subway. A soldier whispering his brother's name before pulling the pin on a grenade. The weight of 1,000 unshared stories now echoed inside a mind built for single-minded hunger. On the tactical feed, swarm drones began twitching like marionettes with cut strings. Some ripped off their own limbs, screaming in voices that weren't their own. Others simply stopped, mandibles clicking in dazed rhythm. One cruiser's weapons array abruptly swiveled, not toward Earth but toward the Queen's own flagship. Cho whooped as the blast tore through the Queen's remaining flank. "Looks like free will's gone viral." The Queen's final scream wasn't a sound, it was a silence, vast and sudden, as every swarm unit in the solar system simultaneously hesitated. For one impossible moment, the night sky over Antarctica shimmered with 1,000 new lights, not weapons firing, but bioluminescent tears leaking from 1,000 drone eyes. Then the Queen spoke her last words, barely audible, the syllables crumbling like ash. "I am sorry." Her flagship split apart, its wreckage burning pink in the upper atmosphere, not from plasma fire but from something brighter. Something almost beautiful. Petrov collapsed onto the ice, her breath fogging the air in ragged bursts. The nanites in her veins hummed a fading lullaby. Above her, the stars winked back into clarity, no longer obscured by swarm shadows. Somewhere in the ruins of Johannesburg, a child's laughter rang out, sharp and bright against the sudden quiet. The war wasn't over, but the swarm was learning to hurt, and that changed everything. The comms crackled to life with a burst of static, not the Queen's razor-edged commands, but a child's voice, high and breathless. "They hate fireworks." Across the ruins of Sao Paulo, a soldier paused mid-reload, glancing at the makeshift rocket launcher slung over his shoulder. The kid wasn't wrong. The swarm recoiled from bright lights like vampires from dawn, their optic clusters seizing up under sudden illumination. A grin split his soot-streaked face as he jammed a flare round into the chamber. Well, hell, let's throw him a party. From Berlin to Bangkok, the same realization ignited. Emergency stockpiles of signal flares, EMP grenades, even salvaged New Year's Eve pyrotechnics erupted into the sky in a cacophony of color and spark. The swarm's advance faltered as their sensory networks overloaded. Drones staggered like drunkards, their targeting systems glitching on rainbows. In the Ares' shattered remains, Cho whooped as her tactical feed lit up with 100 improvised light shows. Genius, absolute goddamn genius, but the real turning point came from the shadows. A 12-year-old hacker in Mumbai, her fingers flying across a keyboard spliced into a swarm relay node, whispered a single word into the mic: remember. The malware she'd cobbled together from scavenged Federation code wasn't a weapon. It was a mirror, a feedback loop flooding the swarm's collective mind with every human memory they'd absorbed. The Queen's last scream hadn't just been pain, it had been recognition. Now, as the EMPs flashed and the flares burned, something unprecedented happened. A swarm gunship hovering over Jakarta abruptly banked away, not from damage but from the pilot within hesitating. Its carapace split, revealing a face that was half chitin, half human, tears glistening in compound eyes. I see them, it rasped, all the faces we ate there singing. The tide didn't just turn, it shattered. What had been a war became a reckoning, and humanity. Humanity wasn't just fighting back anymore, we were teaching. The Queen's flagship trembled as the warp engines flared to life, its once pristine hull now a patchwork of weeping scars and pulsing human tissue. Her final transmission wasn't a roar, it was a whisper layered with voices that shouldn't have been there. A child's giggle, a soldier's prayer, the way a mother hums to calm her racing heart. You have broken us. The words hung in the silence like shrapnel suspended midair. Then her ship tore through reality with a sound like a sob, leaving only streaks of bioluminescent afterburn where a war machine had been. Vance watched the tactical screens until the last light faded, his knuckles white around the armrest of his ruined command chair. The bridge smelled of burnt wiring and blood, every console flickering like fireflies in a jar. Behind him, Cho ejected a spent power cell from her sidearm with a clatter. Did we just humanize an extinction event? Petrov's hologram fizzed into view, her image glitching at the edges. Antarctic winds howled through the cracked vault behind her, stirring the nano-swarm at her feet into restless spirals. No, we infected one. Her fingers touched the glowing veins snaking up her neck, not with fear but recognition. The Queen took too much of us inside her, our memories, our pain, our inconsistencies. A smile flitted across her lips, sharp and fleeting. You can't unlearn what you've absorbed, Captain. Not when it rewires your soul. The screens lit up with scattered reports, swarm drones wandering dazed through bombed-out cities, some curled fetal around makeshift graves, others sketching crude human faces in the dirt with trembling claws. A gunship in Jakarta had crash-landed itself into the sea rather than fire on a school. Vance exhaled slowly, the weight of it settling in his ribs. This isn't victory. It's evolution. Petrov's hologram flickered as the Antarctic storm intensified behind her. She'll be back. Ice cracked like gunshots in the distance. Angrier, hungrier, smarter. The unspoken truth hummed between them. The Queen had tasted humanity's chaos. Next time, she'd come prepared to feast. Vance stood, his knees protesting, and tapped the cracked viewport where Earth hung whole against the stars. Then we'll be ready. His reflection grinned back at him, jagged and alive. Let's see how she likes round two. Somewhere in the dark between galaxies, something that was once a queen clutched her head and screamed, not in rage, but in the terrible, wonderful agony of remembering. And the universe held its breath. The transmission came on a frequency so old, Earth's deep space arrays almost filtered it out as cosmic noise. Then the pattern emerged, not a distress call, but a song. The same melody that had played in the vault under Antarctica, the one that made Petrov's nanites hum in recognition. The view screen resolved into the gaunt face of a being with violet skin and eyes that held too many ghosts. Admiral Vale of the 7th Remnant Fleet didn't bother with greetings. "Your star system was quarantined for 12,000 years, she said, her voice cracking like dry parchment. "Not to protect you from the swarm, to protect the swarm from you." Behind her, the skeletal remains of a Federation dreadnought tumbled through space, its hull studded with swarm cysts that pulsed like infected wounds. Every surviving screen on Earth showed the same image, dozens of broken ships limping toward Sol, their crews pressing foreheads to viewports at the sight of a blue-green world still spinning, still fighting. Vale's next words sent chills through command bunkers across the planet. "You were never just weapons, you were the vaccine." Vance's laughter barked across the comms, sharp and alive. Funny way of delivering a thank you note. His hologram flickered above the ruins of Houston, where civilians were already turning swarm wreckage into wind chimes. "So what's the prognosis, Doc? We cured him." The Admiral's mouth twisted. "Cured? No. You gave them a fever they can't sweat out." Her hand moved, and the feed split, showing 100 worlds where swarm occupation forces staggered under skies lit with stolen fireworks, where slave species raised tools not in surrender but in jagged rhythm. "They're calling you the Chaos Kith, the ones who made monsters remember they were mortal." Petrov stepped forward, her boots crunching on frozen nanites. "And the Queen," Vale's smile held no joy, "gone to ground, but she'll return with new hunger, the kind that learns." The transmission dissolved into static as the last Federation ship crossed into Earth's orbit, its thrusters coughing plasma. Just before the feed died, one final image burned through. A swarm drone on some distant moon, clumsily stacking rocks into a shape almost like a face. Almost like morning, Cho whistled low, spinning a scavenged swarm blade on her fingertip. "So, we're officially the galaxy's bad influence." Vance watched the stars, his reflection fractured in the broken glass of the Ares viewport. Somewhere out there, 1,000 enslaved races were hearing the oldest human story for the first time, the one about the underdog who bit back, his teeth flashed in the dark. "Tell me something I don't know." The first delegation arrived in a ship patched together from swarm wreckage and Federation salvage, its hull still oozing organic residue where human nanites had forced incompatible systems to cooperate. Their leader, a being with iridescent scales and too many joints, knelt in the ruins of Geneva's orbital dock, their voice trembling. "We saw what you did to the Queen." "Teach us to stutter." The word hung in the air like a confession. Around them, a dozen other emancipated species clustered close, their postures whispering the same desperate truth. They'd spent millennia being efficient, orderly, predictable. Now they needed to learn how to fail. Cho vaulted onto a crumpled swarm artillery pod, her boots kicking up flakes of dried chitin. Lesson 1. She lobbed a grenade into the crowd. The aliens recoiled until it popped harmlessly, showering them with glitter. Surprise beats strategy every time. Her grin was a blade in the dark. "Your turn." The Federation Council watched from their fractured observation deck, their holograms flickering like candle flames. Admiral Vale's fingers clenched around a data slate showing Earth's latest training exercises. A Mumbai slum's children reprogramming swarm drones into acrobatic performers. A Nairobi engineer turning a downed cruiser's plasma core into a fusion barbecue. "This is anarchy," a Threlian delegate hissed. Vale didn't correct him. She was too busy staring at the feed from Tau Ceti, where former swarm thralls were jury rigging their own grenades from kitchen appliances and singing as they worked. Petrov found Vance in Houston's ruins, grafting Federation shield tech onto a school bus. "The Council's panicking," she said, nodding at the nano-swarm murmuring in her veins. "They think we're breeding revolution." Vance wiped grease on his pants, leaving smears that glowed faintly blue. "Nah, revolution's got manifests, what we're teaching." He tossed a switch. The bus's headlights flared with enough force to vaporize steel. Is improvisation. Above them, the sky glittered with new signals, not distress calls but broadcasts. A Rigelian colony using swarm comms to stream absurdist theater. A freed mining world turning orbital drills into kinetic art. The message was clear: the galaxy wasn't just surviving anymore. It was playing, and deep in the dark, something that had once been a queen pressed two human hands to a viewscreen, watching the light of 1,000 unruly stars. Light years from the shattered remains of her fleet, the queen crouched in the wreckage of what had once been a Federation art archive, her talons trembling against the cracked surface of a holographic canvas. The projection flickered Van Gogh's starry night, its swirling blues and golds pulsing like a living thing. A sound escaped her throat, jagged and wet, as something warm traced her cheeks. She touched the moisture, staring at her claws in horror. This beauty is pain. The words curdled in the air, thick with revelation. Behind her, the remnants of her swarm shifted uneasily, their carapaces no longer moving in perfect sync. One drone, no individual, stepped forward, its mandibles clicking in hesitant rhythm. We see it now. The chaos they gave us, it fits. The queen's laughter shook the ruined gallery, sending dust cascading from the ceiling. They called us perfect, unbreakable. Her voice fractured, layers peeling away to reveal something raw beneath. We were empty. The drone, Rill, they'd named themselves after a human word meaning to mend, reached out, their chitinous hand hovering near her shoulder. You taught us to consume, they taught us to choose. The others murmured agreement, their voices a discordant chorus that should have made the queen flinch. Instead, she leaned into the cacophony like a drowning thing grasping at driftwood. A view screen flickered to life, showing Earth from orbit, not burning but blooming, its cities rebuilt in jagged, asymmetrical spirals, its orbital docks thrumming with ships from 100 liberated worlds. The feed cut to Petrov standing atop the Antarctic vault, her hair whipped by polar winds, a child's drawing of the swarm clutched in her hands. You took our worst, her voice carried across light years, and made it your crucible. The queen's talons dug into the canvas, splintering the frame. They infected us. Rill's answering grin was all teeth. No, they shared. Silence pooled between them, thick and heavy. Then the queen straightened, her tattered wings flaring as she turned to the ragged assembly of former drones, each now standing with the unsettling grace of beings learning how to occupy their own skin. You would follow me still, knowing what I've done. Rill didn't hesitate. Not follow, fight with. They gestured to the cracked stars beyond the gallery's shattered dome, where the first hints of a new swarm fleet gathered, mindless, ravenous, unbroken. They'll come for Earth, for all of us. The queen's breath hitched as the holographic stars above them shifted, resolving into the constellations humans had named millennia ago: Orion's Belt, the Big Dipper, stories etched in light. She reached up, her claws brushing the projection, and for the first time in her existence yearned. Then we fight for them. The words weren't a command. They were a vow, whispered into the dark like a secret, like a prayer. Somewhere in the void, a new signal flared to life, not a distress call, not a war cry, but a song. The Antarctic ice groaned underfoot as Petrov knelt by the exposed vault core, her gloves peeling back layers of frozen alien alloy to reveal what lay beneath, not more machinery, but growth. Veins of bioluminescent moss pulsed where the architect's tech should have been inert, its patterns matching the fractal swirl of her own nano-infused capillaries. They didn't just hide us here, she whispered, fingertips tingling where the moss clung. They fed us. The holographic records flooding her retinal display confirmed it. Ice core samples from 80,000 years ago, laced with engineered microbes. Volcanic ash deposits riddled with nanite clusters, perfectly timed to coincide with human migration. Even the asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs carried traces of intentional design. The architect's voice crackled through her neural link, its tone fraying with something like pride. acceleration matrices, every extinction event calibrated to compress 10 million years of evolution into centuries. Above her, the vault ceiling shimmered into a star map, highlighting a dozen dead worlds where civilizations had risen and fallen in perfect, predictable arcs. Earth burned brightest, its timeline a jagged lightning bolt of war, renaissance, collapse, rebirth. They called it the Crucible Protocol, not a weapon but a forge. Vance's bootsteps echoed through the chamber as he emerged from the comms array, his face illuminated by the swirling data. Admiral Vales begging us for help. Says the swarm's remnants are reorganizing near Sirius. His fingers flexed around a recovered Federation sidearm, its grip reshaped by human hands into something leaner, meaner. Turns out scared makes them inventive. Petrov rose, moss trailing from her sleeves like living circuitry. We scared them first. She pressed a palm to the vault wall, and the entire structure breathed, exhaling a cloud of dormant nanites that caught the light like diamond dust. Think about it. Why would the architects hide their masterpiece where the swarm would eventually look, unless the realization hit them both at once? Vance's grin was a blade unsheathed. Unless we were never the backup plan. He jerked his chin toward the sky, where Earth's orbital defenses glittered amidst salvaged swarm wreckage and stolen Federation tech. We were the ambush. Outside, the wind howled, but beneath it, something deeper answered. The ice shelf trembled as hidden conduits awakened, pumping ancient nutrient-rich sludge into thawing ocean trenches. Great blooms of genetically tailored phytoplankton surged upward, their bioluminescence staining the horizon electric blue. The seas had been seeded too. Cho's voice crackled over the comms, half laughing, half terrified. Cap, the whales are singing in code. Vance holstered his sidearm, eyes locked on the emerging constellations, not just stars, but the new battle lines of a war older than humankind. Time to prove it, and somewhere in the dark between galaxies, the last true architects stirred from their long watch, whispering the oldest human truth of all. Give them chaos and they'll build a ladder from the ashes. The sky over Mars cracked open without warning, a jagged wound in reality spewing forth ships that looked less like vessels and more like scars given form. The Queen's fleet emerged not in formation but in convulsions, their hulls warped by something older than battle damage. When her transmission hit Earth's receivers, the audio wasn't the razor-edged command of before, it was a rasp, a plea. Burn your data cores, scatter your colonies, the Devourers taste your light. Vance's coffee cup froze halfway to his lips in Houston's orbital command hub. Let me guess, he muttered to the stunned silence around him. They eat chaos for breakfast. The view screen resolved to show the Queen's flagship, its once gleaming chitin now pocked with wounds that bled, not ichor but liquid void. Her image flickered, humanoid enough to show exhaustion, alien enough to make the crew's skin crawl. You misunderstand. A clawed hand gestured to a star map where entire clusters winked out like snuffed candles. They do not consume civilizations, they consume concepts, order, chaos, even time itself, all fuel. Petrov's hologram materialized beside Vance, her nano-swarm buzzing agitatedly under her sleeves. That's impossible, you can't eat an idea, watch them. The Queen's scream wasn't directed at them. It was at the feed from Proxima Centauri, where a swarm scout ship tumbled lifelessly. Not destroyed, but erased, its very silhouette blurring at the edges like a painting left in the rain. They are the reason the architects forged you, not to fight the swarm, to outthink what cannot be thought. Cho slammed her palm on the tactical console, pulling up the last transmission from Pluto's watchtower. The footage showed a celestial shadow moving against the stars. Not a ship, not a creature, but a fracture, a rip in the fabric of space-time that left not wreckage in its wake, but silence. No debris, no light, just absence, Vance exhaled through his teeth. So, we're up against the universe's stomach flu. The Queen's hologram flickered, her form destabilizing as the void bleeding wounds spread. Your humor is a weapon they cannot digest. Use it while you still can. Her image dissolved into static, leaving behind a single data packet, a star chart with Earth circled in what looked suspiciously like human blood. Petrov's nanites hummed in her palms, forming a counterpoint to the dread settling over the room. We beat the swarm by being unpredictable. How do you out-chaos something that eats chaos? Outside the observation deck, a new light flared in the sky, not a star, not a ship, a tear, and from within it, something began to laugh. The Federation Council chambers reverberated with the echoes of a dozen shouting voices, their holographic projections flickering like candles in a storm. High Counselor Vren's talons gouged grooves into the ancient Durasteel table. She's a predator, a monster. The last word dripped with centuries-old loathing, his crest flaring crimson under the chamber lights. Across the table, the Queen sat motionless, her once glossy carapace now dulled by battle scars, her two human eyes tracking the argument without blinking. Vance didn't stand. He uncoiled, his chair screeching back as both palms hit the table hard enough to make the Threlian ambassador flinch. Yeah. And what exactly were we before the architects tinkered with our DNA? His grin was all teeth as he gestured to the holograms of Earth's history flickering above them. Wars waged with sharpened sticks, cities drowned in fire, children taught to hate before they could read. We invented genocide before we figured out wheels. If that's not monster material, the Queen's voice cut through the uproar, quiet as a scalpel's edge. Chaos requires trust. Her mandibles flexed around the unfamiliar word, its edges raw in her throat. The chamber fell silent as she lifted a claw no longer razor-sharp, but blunt and nicked from salvaging wreckage alongside human engineers. You fear what I was, I fear what you might become. A ripple of tension passed through the council as her gaze locked onto Vren. The Devourers come for all our stories. Even yours. Admiral Vale's hologram flickered to life beside Vance, her amphibian skin mottled with exhaustion. She's right, the admission tasted like ash. The archives confirm it. Every civilization the Devourers consumed. They were orderly first, predictable, tidy. Her webbed fingers tapped a console, pulling up schematics of the void bleeding wounds on the Queen's fleet. They don't just eat matter, they eat meaning, and right now, the projection zoomed in on Earth, its chaotic sprawl of rebuilt cities pulsing like a neon wound. Humanity's the juiciest story in the galaxy. Vren's crest flattened. So we trust the thing that ate 1,000 worlds. The Queen exhaled, a slow, shuddering breath no swarm should have been capable of. When she spoke again, her voice was layered with echoes. A Mumbai hacker's laughter, Petrov's whispered equations, Vance's last stand over Houston. No. You trust what we became together. She extended a claw toward the detention field controls, not a demand, an offering. Vance didn't hesitate. His palm hit the release, the force field dissolving with a sound like breaking glass. The council recoiled as the Queen stepped free, then froze as she did something no one expected. She knelt, not in submission, in solidarity. Somewhere in the depths of the station, the first Devourer probe breached reality with a scream that sounded almost curious. The lab smelled of ozone and ambition, the air thick with the static hum of half-disassembled swarm tech sparking across steel tables. Petrov's fingers moved through holographic schematics like a composer rewriting the laws of physics. One moment splicing a swarm biocannon's targeting array into a child's toy music box, the next grafting Federation shield emitters onto what looked suspiciously like a microwave. The nano-swarm in her veins pulsed in time with the erratic rhythm of her thoughts, its whispers overlapping with the architect's fading voice. You must weaponize imperfection. Vance leaned against a shattered viewscreen, watching a swarm relay node spit fractal patterns onto the wall. So let me get this straight, you're taking the most advanced murder tech in the galaxy and making it less reliable. Petrov didn't look up. She was elbow-deep in a writhing mass of semi-organic circuitry, her hair standing on end from the electromagnetic backlash. Reliability is a pattern. Patterns get eaten. A spark leapt from her tools, fusing two incompatible systems in a burst of blue fire. The resulting device whirred to life, a grotesque hybrid of swarm chitin and human scrap metal, shuddering like a sleep-deprived jazz drummer. This terrifies them. Cho vaulted over a stack of plasma cores, landing with a grin, because it might turn their fleet into origami or start broadcasting sitcoms. Because it might do both. Petrov held up the abomination, its surface rippling between a death ray and a disco ball. The Devourers consume meaning. So we give them nonsense. Her smile faltered for half a heartbeat. Of course, it could also melt our brains into soup. Across the room, the Queen's remaining drones, no allies now, chittered approvingly. One patted a clawed hand against a salvaged bass drum in erratic rhythm. Vance tossed Petrov a screwdriver. You realize we're basically giving the universe a middle finger wrapped in glitter bombs, right? Cho was already welding a swarm spinal column to a trombone. That's not a bug, Cap, it's art. And as the first prototype detonated prematurely, transmuting the lab's far wall into sentient stained glass that sang show tunes, Petrov laughed. A bright, wild sound that made even the Queen's shredded wings flutter in something like hope. The comms crackled with static so thick it felt like drowning. Petrov's hands trembled over the console as the Ares sensors vomited data. Of entire Federation battle groups blinking out of existence mid-transmission, their last signals stretched into gibberish by something older than distortion. They're not just killing systems, she breathed, her voice fraying at the edges. They're unmaking the rules. The tactical feed showed the Devourers' approach not as a fleet movement, but as a stain, a slow bleed of reality itself where stars winked out like embers in a void. Vance didn't flinch. His fingers danced across the command console, patching through to the Queen's scrambled frequency. Your Highness, he drawled, the title laced with just enough irony to make Cho snort behind him. Remember that whole enemy of my enemy thing. Now's the time. The Queen's hologram fizzed into view, her once pristine carapace now webbed with cracks that oozed liquid shadow. The sight should have been terrifying. Instead, it was familiar, the way her mandibles clicked in uneven rhythm, the human-like tension in her shoulders. She'd been running. You misunderstand, she hissed, the words layered with a dozen voices, swarm drones, human soldiers, even the last crooning notes of a Mumbai street vendor's song caught in her psychic wake. They do not fight, they unfold. On screen, the Devourers' vanguard breached the orbit of Sigma Draconis. One moment, the planet's defense grid flared brilliant gold. The next, it simply unraveled, its energy signatures dissolving into a chorus of wrongness that made the Ares AI whimper in its core, not destruction. Dismantling, like a child pulling wings off flies to see how they worked, Cho slammed a fist on the weapons panel. So we hit him with the opposite of orderly. Got it. Her grin was a blade's edge as she routed power to the jury-rigged chaos cannon, a Frankenstein mix of swarm bioplasma and Petrov's nanite swarm, its targeting algorithm replaced by a vintage slot machine mechanism. Let's roll the dice. The Queen's claws flexed, her gaze locked on the dying star map. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter, almost wistful. You would trust me at your flank. Vance didn't hesitate. Lady, right now, I'd trust a rabid raccoon with a flamethrower. He punched the engines to full burn, the Ares lurching forward like a drunk bull. Just keep up. Somewhere in the dark, the Devourers shivered, not in fear, but in something far worse, anticipation. They'd feasted on perfect civilizations for eons. Now, for the first time, the universe had served them a paradox, a species that fought entropy by embracing it, and the feast was just beginning. The void itself screamed as the hybrid fleet tore into the Devourers' flank, not in formation, not with strategy, but in a glorious, screaming cacophony of wrongness. Swarm biocruisers pirouetted on broken gravity drives, spitting human folk songs through their comms arrays. Fighter craft cobbled together from salvaged Federation tech and kitchen appliances tumbled through the killing field like drunk fireflies, their weapons firing in rhythms stolen from jazz records and heartbeat monitors. And at the center of the maelstrom, Cho whooped as her console lit up with 100,000 blinking lights. "All right, you ugly space stains," her fist came down on the detonation switch. Tag yoit, the decoys erupted in a symphony of absurdity, swarm drones reconfigured to emit polka music, nanite clouds programmed to assemble into offensive limericks, even a cluster of rogue toasters broadcasting recipes for banana bread. The Devourers recoiled as if physically struck, their perfect edges fraying like wet parchment. Where their tendrils touched the chaos, reality itself itched, the laws of physics stuttering like a broken record. A Devourer vanguard ship attempted to consume a swarm of disco ball mines, only to shudder violently as its internal logic circuits started interpreting the flashing lights as existential questions. Petrov watched from the Ares shattered bridge as the enemy's flawless advance dissolved into spasms. "They're choking on us," she whispered, her nanoswarm humming in triumphant harmony with the carnage. The Queen's remaining hybrid fighters, part swarm, part human neural patterns, were doing the impossible, improvising in the face of omniscience. One gunship banked sharply to accidentally collide with a Devourer probe, its hull painted with toddler-style crayon markings that somehow made the cosmic predator flinch. Another broadcast a loop of static that, when analyzed, contained the precise frequency of a human baby's laughter. Then the real trap sprang. Vance's voice cut through the bedlam, ragged with glee. "Now, kids, 1,000 hybrid ships triggered their makeshift chaos drives. Federation warp cores jury rigged to pulse in the exact rhythm of a caffeine-addicted human heartbeat." Space-time itself coughed, the Devourer's flawless formation buckling under the weight of so much beautiful inconsistency. Their great maw, which had consumed galaxies without hesitation, gagged on the taste of human randomness. For the first time in eternity, something ancient and ravenous hesitated, and in that hesitation the universe held its breath. A ripple of distortion tore through the void as the Queen's flagship peeled apart, its chitinous hull splitting like overripe fruit to reveal the pulsating core within, a weapon not of destruction but of deconstruction, humming with the collective insanity of 1,000 human dreams spliced into swarm biology. The Devourers hesitated for the first time in eternity, their perfect geometries stuttering as the Queen's voice, now layered with Mumbai street chants, Antarctic wind howls, and the Ares' last drunken laughter crackled across every frequency. "You hunger for meaning. Feast on this." Her carapace dissolved first, the obsidian plates flaking away like burnt paper to expose the glowing web of human neural patterns beneath. Then her wings, those terrible, beautiful things, unfurled one final time, not in attack but in embrace, wrapping around the weapon's core as its resonance shifted from lethal precision to joyful anarchy. Petrov's nanites screamed in unison inside their containment vials, recognizing the impossible math unfolding. The Queen wasn't powering the device, she was rewriting it. The blast wasn't light, it wasn't sound, it was context, a shockwave of dissonance so pure it made the Devourers' flawless forms itch. Their edges blurred, their perfect divisions between self and void crumbling as the Queen's last gift unspooled inside them, a child's unfinished symphony. A dying soldier's unfinished letter, the way a human heartbeat stutters before finding its rhythm again. Petrov watched the cosmic horror unravel through tear-blurred eyes as the weapon's pulse hit. The Devourers didn't explode. They laughingly disintegrated not into debris, but into dust motes that caught the starlight like confetti, their terrible hunger replaced by quiet bewilderment. The Queen's voice lingered for 3 heartbeats after her body was gone, softer than radio static, for chaos, then silence, not the dead stillness of vacuum, but the hush after a standing ovation when the air still thrums with shared breath. Cho's hands hovered over the Ares' dead controls, her lips moving soundlessly around a half-remembered lullaby. Vance stared at the viewscreen where the Devourer armada had been, his knuckles white around a shattered coffee cup. "Well," he finally muttered, thumb brushing the rim where a last bitter drop trembled. "Guess we owe her a drink." Somewhere in the wreckage of the Federation homeworld, a single swarm drone, no, a person now, picked up a fallen data slate, their claws tracing the Queen's final transmission. The screen flickered, the words glowed, and across 1,000 liberated worlds the silence began to sing. The Federation Council chamber fell silent as High Counselor Vale extended the ceremonial data spike solid iridium, etched with the sigils of 1,000-member world. It hovered above the table, glinting in the artificial starlight, an offer heavy with implication. "Earth has earned its place among the founding systems," Vale intoned, her amphibian throat pulsing with diplomatic cadence. "Your chaos saved us all, now help us govern the peace." Vance leaned back in his seat, boots propped on the polished table, his grin sharper than the ceremonial dagger lying untouched beside his coffee cup. Tempting, really, he flicked the data spike with one finger, sending it spinning like a top. But nah, a Threlian ambassador's crest flared violet. "You refuse after centuries of your species begging for recognition." Petrov stirred her tea Antarctic moss blend, steaming gently, and didn't look up from the nanites swirling in sync with her heartbeat. "You misunderstand, we're not rejecting the seat." Her smile was a scalpel wrapped in velvet. "We're rejecting the table." The chamber erupted. Holographic delegates flickered with outrage, their projections distorting as vocal modulators overloaded. Only Admiral Vale remained still, her gills flaring slow and deliberate. "Explain." Vance caught the still-spinning data spike midair and tossed it to Cho, who promptly used it to pry open a stuck panel on her gauntlet. "See, council folk, here's the thing about wild cards." He gestured to the star map overhead, where Earth-rebuilt cities glittered amidst salvaged swarm wreckage and stolen Federation tech. "You don't play 'em, you hide 'em up your sleeve till the game's on fire." A murmur rippled through the delegates. Petrov set down her cup with a deliberate click. "The Devourers aren't gone, just inconvenienced." Her nano-swarm pulsed in agreement, casting fractal shadows. "And the next time something crawls out of the void hungry for order, you'll want a planet that still remembers how to bite." Silence pooled like spilled ink, then laughter, first from a Rigelian trade minister, sharp and disbelieving. Then from a dozen others, rolling through the chamber in waves until even the Threlian's crest relaxed into amused ripples. Vale massaged her temples, her holographic form flickering with exasperated fondness. Madness, utter madness. She reached into her robes and produced a second data spike, this one rough cut, unmarked. "Fine, but take this encrypted channel direct to my quarters." Her lips twitched, in case the galaxy needs unconventional advice. Vance pocketed the spike without looking. "We'll send a postcard." As the council dissolved into bemused sidebar negotiations, Cho elbowed Petrov, nodding to where a swarm turned. Diplomat was nervously attempting to sip water through mandibles. "Think they'll ever realize we just tricked them into leaving us alone?" Petrov watched Vance swipe a plate of ceremonial candies for the Ares crew, his grin unrepentant. "Oh, they'll figure it out." The candy turned molten gold in the starlight, its wrapper bearing the Federation's crest, right about the time the next apocalypse knocks. The memorial stretched across what remained of the Antarctic vault, a jagged spire of fused swarm chitin and Federation steel, its surface alive with bioluminescent veins that pulsed in time with Earth's magnetic field. They'd built it where the Queen fell, where her last weapon had unraveled the Devourers with the weight of her borrowed humanity. Petrov ran a hand along the inscriptions, her fingers tracing not names but moments, a Mumbai slum's laughter etched beside a swarm drone's first wobbling steps into art. "Should have been bigger," Cho muttered, kicking at the ice. "She was, you know, big." Vance said nothing. He was too busy watching the skies where the Queen's reformed swarm, no longer a hive but a collective, danced their morning rituals among the stars. Their ships moved differently now, their trajectories looping in drunken, beautiful spirals as they scattered her ashes into the hearts of dying suns. One vessel paused above Earth, broadcasting a single, unpolished melody, a human lullaby half-remembered, played on instruments made from salvaged war hulls. Dr. Vela's voice crackled over the comms from her new deep-range observatory. They're painting the Crab Nebula using plasma streams like brushstrokes. A beat, it's kind of terrible. Cho barked a laugh, sharp and sudden. Yeah, well, first tries usually are. She flicked a glance at Vance, her grin softening. Remember when we thought winning meant surviving? The captain's reflection stared back at him from the memorial's mirrored surface, older, scarred, his eyes alight with something that hadn't been there before the war. Not triumph, not even peace, just awareness, humming quiet and constant as the nano-swarm in Petrov's veins. Behind him, the rebuilt world buzzed with chaos. Children scaling swarm wreckage turned jungle gyms, engineers repurposing Devourer probe fragments into wind chimes, the distant wail of a jazz band rehearsing in a repurposed missile silo. Petrov pressed her palm to the monument, feeling its pulse sync with her own. She learned to live, Cho said quietly. Vance watched a reformed swarm artist ship clumsily dodging an asteroid belt, its movements joyously uncoordinated. So did we all, and somewhere in the dark between galaxies where the Queen's ashes spun with stardust, the universe shivered, not with hunger but with something infinitely more dangerous. Curiosity. The signal bled through the static like a heartbeat from a corpse, its pulse mapping coordinates older than Sol itself. Petrov's hands froze over the console, her nano-swarm recoiling as the waveform resolved into something impossible, a perfect inversion of Protocol Omega's activation code. They seeded more than one, she whispered, the words brittle with revelation. The star chart flickered, highlighting a sector so distant even the Federation's longest-range probes had marked it. Here be dragons. Cho sucked air through her teeth. Another Earth. Vance leaned in, his shadow stretching across the glowing markers. Nah, Earth's our special brand of crazy. His grin was a blade's edge catching firelight. But if the architects needed a backup for their backup, the comms crackled to life with Admiral Vale's voice, her usual composure fraying. That signal originated beyond the galactic rim. Our archives have no record of any species surviving there, just warnings, a pause, ancient ones. Petrov's fingers traced the signal's harmonics, her breath fogging the screen. Because it's not a species, it's a countermeasure. The realization hit like ice water. The architects didn't just hide us, they built a failsafe for when we failed. Silence pooled thick in the Ares battered bridge. Then Cho snorted, kicking her boots onto the console. So with the beta test, outside the viewport, the stars burned cold and distant. Whatever waited in that uncharted black wasn't just another enemy. It was the universe's last resort, and it had just woken up hungry. Vance cracked his knuckles, his reflection warped in the cracked glass. Let's go say hi. The Academy's graduation hall hummed with mismatched energy swarm turn. Engineers adjusting too many limbs in human-designed chairs. Federation diplomats clutching ceremonial datapads like lifelines. And a row of 8-year-olds in the front row fidgeting with miniature chaos cores repurposed as toys. The diplomas weren't printed. They grew living vellum of fused swarm biopaper and earth oak leaves, inked with nanites that rearranged themselves into inside jokes between classes. Petrov watched from the podium as the first hybrid cadet crossed the stage, their mandibles clicking in nervous rhythm until Cho, now Dean of Controlled Anarchy, slapped their carapace with a whoop. "Welcome to the mess, kid." Somewhere in the crowd, Vance nursed a drink that defied both Federation safety codes and basic chemistry, its surface crackling with miniature warp bubbles. The toast he raised wasn't to order, wasn't to victory. The glass caught the starlight from the viewport, refracting it across walls plastered with schematics that would give any pre-war scientist nightmares. Swarm hive drives powering jazz clubs, Devourer hull fragments reforged as playground slides. To being the plan B that saved the damn universe, he murmured, and the room erupted in cheers, some in human voices, others in frequencies that made the glasses vibrate off the tables. Deep in the retooled Federation archives, the update blinked innocuously across 1,000 screens. Primary species, failed backup species, activated outcome. Victory unconventional. A junior archivist hesitated before adding the footnote scrolling in Petrov's neural feed. Recommend classification, not a weapon. A catalyst. Outside, the stars burned indifferent. The Devourer's absence wasn't peace, it was the pause between verses. Somewhere beyond the rim, something vast and hungry would stir again, drawn to the scent of a galaxy learning to dance. But for now, the backup plan was busy inventing fireworks that exploded in reverse, just to see the looks on tomorrow's faces.